Welcome to another video by your friend Matthew. Okay, so today I want to talk about goodness. And I have been thinking about truth, beauty, and goodness, along with other big concepts like that, kind of long-standing universal questions and, philosophical pillars, right? And so, I've been trying to make sense of my own view of goodness. And a lot of times as just kind of a creative catalyst or tool to shake things up and freshen my eyes, my philosophical eyes, my third eyes. I use what I call book divination. And so I ask a book a question and close my eyes and turn to a random page, point to a certain part of that page, open my eyes, and then kind of act as if, at the very least, act as if that passage or that sentence that I point to is giving me some sort of useful or interesting answer to my question. And so a few weeks ago, I did a book divination about goodness, and I used a Simone Weil anthology as the source for my book divination. And so my commentary today and my view of goodness that I've been kind of unpacking lately is influenced by that book divination. So basically, I think of goodness as a form of transcendence, basically. It's interesting because from the Buddhist perspective, some Buddhist paths have this idea of basic goodness. And, there's many ways to think about that, but the notion is that kind of underneath our attachments and our hang-ups and our ego narratives and all that stuff, there's a basic goodness that we all have access to. And I dig that. And perhaps what I'm about to say about goodness doesn't contradict that. But the way I've been thinking about goodness is that it is the presence of and the practice of a surplus inside of us. So this almost has kind of a religious flavor to it. I would say that, to me, when I think of the divine, I think of, the divine having many different aspects to it. And I would say that the most fundamental aspect or reality of the divine is that it is this unboundedness and undefinability. It's kind of this infinite potential, this infinite reserve that is eternal and infinite, and it's unborn and undying, and it is the transcendent, the most transcendent aspect of reality, the most transcendent aspect of the divine. It is unfixed. It is always in flux. And so that's my notion of the most fundamental aspect of reality and the most fundamental aspect of the divine. And out of that infinitude, the material world manifests out of the infinitude of that unboundedness. And for us as human beings, we are expressions of that infinitude, just like everything else is. And also, inside of us, we have an unboundedness or a transcendent aspect inside of us. And to me, that is connected to goodness. So we could say that, even though I don't think of the divine as having this kind of meta consciousness where it decides to plant these certain things inside of human beings or something like that, but at least poetically, we could say that the divine, in its infinitude and in its goodness, gives us access to transcendence inside of us. And, I don't want this to be too vague. It's very specific to me. What I mean by transcendence here is that we have the potential to rise above our habitual and mechanical nature, for example. We have the capacity to rise above our own self-absorption. And, for me, when I was a teenager, my first year of college, before that, I wasn't interested in learning really, or school, or books. And suddenly I had a pretty big awakening that first year that involved a lot of different transformations. But the reason I bring it up here is that awakening and that transformation that started happening my first year of college, that was my first big taste of transcendence inside of me, because suddenly I could focus better. Suddenly I had more curiosity. Suddenly I was doing really well in class, and I was just really engaged, and I wanted to go to class. I wanted to learn. I wanted to read. I wanted to understand. I wanted to know more about myself and the world and history and all sorts of things. And it felt like I kind of became a different person almost. So yeah, I felt like I was tasting some sort of surplus inside of me that I didn't even know was there. And that's the sort of thing I mean. So yeah, I am associating that transcendence with goodness. The presence of that transcendence inside of us is good with a capital G. And the practice, the access of it, and the practice of embracing that goodness embracing that transcendence is good with a capital G. And it's, that kind of surplus, there are many different types of that surplus, You could say that it kind of allows us to rise above our lower natures, so to speak, right? So it's the type of thing that, if you get locked into anger or something like that, even though it's very difficult, you can tap into that transcendent dimension inside of you and rise above your anger and take deep breaths and slow down and move through it, move past it. Same goes for impatience. Same goes for, when you're feeling kind of a lack of compassion or something like that, a jadedness, a cynicism toward the world. You can shift beyond that. You can access and taste the presence of goodness inside of you in order to transcend that default state, right? So it can look like love and compassion. It can look like presence and engagement. It can look like patience and stillness. It can look like creativity. I think that's one big aspect of it. Like, we all are creative in our own way. some more explicitly so than others, but nevertheless, I think that we can taste more creativity inside of us than we usually give ourselves credit for, unless we're just hyper artistic and creative as beings. So it can make itself known through love and compassion, creativity, energy, mental energy, physical energy even. So that's my notion of the good. It is that which allows us to transcend our default settings, our mechanicalness, our habitual patterns. And that does connect with Simone Weil, who I've been reading a lot. She saw grace that way. She saw this as grace. She thought of nature and the human being as largely mechanical, but grace is what allows us to kind of transcend our mechanicalness, which reminds me of Gurdjieff. But yeah, for her, it was through kind of attention. She saw attention as this really powerful form of love. And if we can kind of bracket our own ordinary ego involvement, then we can see more clearly. And that seeing, that attention, allows us to access grace. And so that's my notion of goodness. That's a brief nutshell of my notion of goodness. And I think it's a powerful idea, and it's a powerful practice. Because I think in many ways, for many years, I've accessed certain types of that transcendence inside of me, but I still have my own struggles, my own moments and modes where it's harder for me to rise above and access that. And in a kind of Simone Weil way / almost a tantric way, I think about tantra here, or alchemy, where on the tantric path, it's kind of like the most difficult energies and the most difficult challenges almost give you more opportunity to practice transcendence, or to alchemize that difficult energy or situation into something sacred or something beautiful. And Simone Weil had a similar notion in a way. I don't think she ever referenced Tantra, although she was influenced by Hinduism. But she saw God's absence, or removal from nature, as as providing the gateway for our own choice to connect, or yearn for, or access God or grace. So she saw that as a necessary part of the divine plan. I don't use that terminology. I don't think of it as a divine plan per se, but I do think that in my own life, when I am struggling with a certain situation that makes me feel more kind of gripped or pulled by my lower nature, so to speak, that does provide me with an even more intensified opportunity to practice goodness, to practice and to taste that transcendent dimension inside of me. And so, yeah, that's my notion of goodness. And I will plan to make videos also about my kind of vision of beauty and my vision of truth. So until next time, peace out. She says peace out too.